what problem your company is trying to solve in the market. So what is the problem and what are you doing about it? Cliff, do you want to kick off at that end?
Hello, right. For those of you who don't know, my name's Cliff. I have two companies. I'm a partner at a law firm called Lewis Silkin, and I am the managing director of an advisory firm called 11. And what we look to do is work with companies using technologies and applying them to ensure that rights and royalties and revenues are properly tracked, working particularly in the worlds of artificial intelligence, blockchain, and mobile.
So my name is Jörn. I'm working for ICE. It's a company set up by collecting societies from Germany, Sweden, and the UK. And what we try to solve is consolidate the data, the copyright data, into one database, and then do the licensing on behalf of our customers on a multi-territorial scale, and to really monetize their rights and royalties in the most efficient way.
My name is Hans Peter. I'm from Music. We are a relatively new entity in this business. Basically what we do, we fix digital royalties in the US for predominantly non-US rights owners. On the last 10 months, we've collected more than $1.5 million from YouTube of previously unclaimed money. And what we do is we hate using all these fancy words, but our technology works based on the existing infrastructure in the business and then fixes the holes that they leave instead of trying to come up with a brand new infrastructure. So we're working with today's problems and trying to fix them with what we have.
Hi, I'm Mike Edwards from Audible Magic. For the last 11 years, we've been helping user-generated content platforms prevent music from getting up on their site, prevent copyright music. The issue that we're grappling with at the moment, and I believe we're solving, is how do we change from stopping all this content getting up there to enabling it to get up there and enable our customers, the sites, to recognize that music, understand whose music it is, identify the rights owners, and track the usage and pay the rights owners for that usage.
Okay, thanks. So when we did this just a few seconds ago, there was a word that was used all the time, which was fragmentation. And we have a great opportunity in the music business at the moment because a lot more people are now paying for music. The money is coming in. We're seeing huge growth, double-figure growth that doesn't look like it's going to slow down. It's very exciting. But we have this big problem, which is people aren't getting paid, or maybe the wrong people are getting paid. And these fine companies here are all looking to try and solve this problem in a different way. But we know this is a problem. But my next question is, what is the scale of the problem? I mean, how much money is sitting on the table, under the table? How many people are not getting paid who should be getting paid? Like, how big is this problem now?
Well, I'll quote Benji Rogers, who'll be on later today, who has to say that for the first time there's more money on the table than under the table for the music industry, which I think is as good a way of putting it, Benji's here as well, as putting it as it can be. So really the opportunity is whether or not for once the music industry wants to deal with what's available and ready to take rather than what it's been able to keep. My view on the fragmentation point is that what has led to that has been a lack of alignment. From a strategic position, you've got a bunch of interested parties, asymmetric rights, conflicting views and viewpoints from rights holders, and really what everyone should now do, to your point, Steve, is now the money is here, now is the time to align and stop with the fragmentation.
Yeah, and from our point of view, it's like what we struggling with is also like the fragmentation of the rights themselves. So if you do multi-territorial licensing and the music service asks for a license, then it's sometimes really hard for them to get their license straight. So because you need you have a couple of licensing entities you get a license from, and if you want to expand in other territories or you are already active on a nearly global scale, the fragmentation you need to deal with it's like incredible. And if it comes for the tracking royalties and collecting income, it's also like one international hit could be like a source of nearly 20,000 sources where you can get your royalties from. So it's like everything is kind of fragmented. The rights are fragmented, but also all the sources where you can collect your royalties.
When you say there's 20,000 sources, do you mean like...
where you can get your royalties from, like music services, television, broadcasting, radio, content platforms. So if you really have a hit as a music author, it's really hard to track where you can get your royalties from.
So you're looking at 20,000 potential as a music owner, 20,000 potential sources of income, which is great. But if you're one of those 20,000 sources, you're also looking at hundreds of thousands of rights owners who you need to pay. And somewhere in that, data can solve the problem, but it's not right now. It's not being fixed. So how can we, solve this? Is there like a magic bullet? We're going to obviously have to talk about, if you want to say it, all right.
Well, I mean, we all say that the fragmentation of rights is the problem in this business. I disagree, because the fragmentation of rights is just what happened because the underlying data set has never been good enough. So it was always there. Just before, it was just centralized in a society in each of the worlds of the countries in the world, and then they had the universal claiming right. But just because they could collect the money doesn't mean that the money went out to you guys, if any of you guys are out there writing music. So the data problem is still the underlying issue here, and as long as data is not handled more carefully at the genesis of creation, which means at the writer camps or in the studios or wherever, it doesn't matter whether you call it Excel, whether you call it PDF to be even more ridiculous, or if you call it blockchain. Shit in means shit out. So you need to do the homework in order to fix this.
Yeah, and just a little bit on the scale. And we've, as I said, been doing this for 11 years. It took us 10 years to get the first month where we processed more than 1 billion identification requests in a single month. So that's 1 billion new files being uploaded to about 30 different sites. 12 months later, 2017, we processed for the first time, August 2017, processed for the first time 2 billion. Took us 9 years to get to 1 billion UGC files, took us 12 months to get to 2 billion, and then it took us 6 months to get to 3 billion. And we're now processing over 3 billion new files being uploaded to the internet every month.
And this is not using blockchain technology?
This is using incredibly quick databases and our technology to basically check and see if the file contains copyright music. Last year we blocked, our identification resulted in the blocking of 820 million files from being uploaded. So you're talking about money being left on the table. This is money that's not even getting to the table.
Right. Okay, so let's just get into blockchain quickly, because I think it's inevitable that it's going to come up as a solution to this problem we're seeing at the moment. I was doing a panel a few weeks ago with some of the blockchain companies, and they talk about the problem being transparency and the solution being blockchain. Cliff, you're shaking your head.
Well, the problem is that, I'm going to quote my therapist over my 12-step program, which is, you aren't going to get cured unless you know it's a problem. So there isn't really a huge amount of traction when you get these blockchain companies going to record companies and saying, your biggest problem is transparency. They don't accept that or recognize that as a problem. So for as long as they think that transparency is the problem and blockchain is the solution, it will not be enough. That just will not work. And blockchain technology, the global repertoire database could have existed on Excel if the parties were aligned and incentivized to do that. So
the global repertoire database being the industry's supposedly global attempt to unify all of the data around all recordings, publishings, works.
Yeah, so in the early onset of the internet and digital rights management, people understood that there needed to be a single source of truth. Blockchain technologies, or distributed technologies, however, offer a series of potential tools for what blockchain does best. It reduces the cost of trust, it encodes trust and provenance into the data itself, and what it does also is potentially through tokens and or rewards, incentivize people to put in good data and help update that. So a series of blockchain-based distributed solutions even before you get to smart contracts. But blockchain is not a magic wand, and it is not the solution. It can be part of the solution, but there needs to be an understanding that there's a genuine problem beforehand.
Well, the problem is there's a lot of money, and some people are getting a lot of it, and some people aren't getting any of it. And the ones
Well, a
who are
lot of
getting-
people don't see that as a problem, Steve.
Yes, exactly. So some of the people who are getting a lot of it will not like to have complete transparency in the system. And that's not going to, I mean, this is a political problem, it's a commercial problem, it's not a technological problem. So technology won't save this.
Sorry, I'm keen to hear from everyone else, but what the existing incumbents on the record side and on the publishing side need to understand, there is a sense of happy days are here again, everyone's getting paid, and we can kind of close the door on the change. The amount of change that is coming in terms of user-generated content, in terms of dynamic and non-linear content, artificially generated stuff, it's going to be created at such a rate of knots that if we don't sort this problem now, no one will ever get paid properly.
Yeah, I mean, just on that scale, I talked about the increase just restricted to 30 online platforms. There are thousands of new apps appearing in the App Store every month, even more in Google Store. All of those, well, a good percentage of those have use of music in some way involved in the app. The profusion of outlets, your 20,000 will be 40,000 by the end of the year and 80,000 by the end of the following year. To follow the conventional licensing processes,
So I
won't be able
think you might need to...
to follow the conventional licensing processes just will be inadequate to keep up with that volume of new licenses that are needed.
So the title of the panel is about investing in music, and the subtext is the value of music. Just recently, we've seen an example of that with Sony ATV buying out the remainder, or 60% of EMI, for 2.3 billion, a 20 times multiple. It's a huge amount of money. There's a new fund from Hipgnosis to buy catalog of nearly $250 million. Concord bought Imagine, the publisher, for $500 million. There are these huge deals happening now, lots and lots of money. Rights music has a huge value. But that value is no use unless there's a way to actually unlock it. So I imagine that we've got quite a few startups in the room, people working with Lean Square to build technology that can add value to music. But the experience is still, how do we get access to it? How do we unlock it? How do we do license deals? Is this still a problem? Are there ways that we can get over this?
I think that there's huge value to be added to the business, but we should not fool ourselves in thinking that only new tech can do it. We can see, for instance, that when we access the data, of all the commercial relevant stuff out there, which is like 20-30% of all available tracks, that's 95% of value. Out of those, a third has no composer-author data in it at all. So this is not something tech can solve. This is something that the business people need to solve with their back-end people to make sure that the data is in there. So yes, there is a value to be added and there's a value to be provided, but the basics of the business is still so flawed that we don't know what the true problem is right now, because I don't believe that the 30% out there should not be fixed with what we have today.
I don't see I'm not as pessimistic as Hans-Peter. I think there's a lot of, he's actually doing a great job in aggregating data. There's people like ourselves, people like OCL aggregating licenses so that small startups can go in and get licenses from one source, and they will then automatically have licenses from all the rights owners that are partnering with companies like us and with OCL. So the licensing process is becoming a lot simpler. So you guys out there who are starting up apps, you won't have to worry about the administration of rights. Companies like ours will do it for you. And you'll be able to get the music rights and exploit them and encourage new and creative uses of music in content.
So if I'm a startup, can I come to you, Jorn, and say I want access to the catalog that you represent?
We are actually working on this. So currently we are licensing major music services. We have 55 licensings in place, but by the end of the year we will have a so-called ICE direct solution. That means if you are a music service and you are active in more than one territory, you can buy a license online from us, which unlocks immediately the repertoire we represent, and then all the 300,000 music authors we represent are within the license. So this is actually what we are building currently, and will be probably up and running end of the year. But when we started, that's right, we were focusing on the major music services like Spotify, Google and Apple. But I would also like to mention it really depends how you define music tech. So on which side you are actually sitting. Do you want to distribute music? Do you want to create an end consumer music app? Or do you want to fix a problem in the industry and try to unlock micro-licensing solutions or finding royalties which are not tracked yet or not collected? So it really depends on which side you see yourself on the industry and what you want to fix to help getting the most of the royalties back to the music authors.
Cliff, you...
Well, again, I don't want to crush any dreams here, but I mean, the work that Audible Magic and OCL are doing in order to help with micro-licensing is great, but the moment you become successful, the industry will punish you for that. Well, we can discuss that later. It's still too difficult for music licensing. It's still too fragmented. There still isn't an understanding now. It's very difficult for small startups to get the attention of rights holders in a world where YouTube and Facebook are allegedly writing these huge checks. So it's very difficult to get any bandwidth or any focus upon them. So that's one of the problems. I think that there also needs to be a real focus on a chain of value. There's too much whinging about a value gap without focusing on a very elegant and sophisticated chain of value. And I think the choice for every music startup, what's not clever is presenting yourself as a platform that doesn't need to get rights, rather than presenting yourself as a platform that knows it needs to get rights, but will engage with the rights holders. So without being specific about any particular platform that may have alluded to, I think that is the subtle but important difference between certain platforms.
We've got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to turn it out to questions if anyone has any questions. And if not, I do. Because we have talked about how difficult it is and what a mess it is at the moment, how data can solve that, but there's no real evidence that data is going to solve it, because there are portions of the industry that don't want transparency, that opacity is their friend, because that's how they're getting paid.
It's profitable.
So this seems to be the problem is not going to get solved anytime soon, and because of AI, which means that machines can now spit out songs at an incredible rate, because of user-generated content, which means people are just uploading stuff all over the place, the problem is getting worse and worse and worse. It's accelerating. So, in that context, what is the future for collecting societies, for this fragmented kind of network that we have at the moment? Are they just going to implode, explode? There used to be one society in every country. That's where you would go to get a deal. Now you can go to all sorts of different places to get small slices of catalogue, and this problem seems to be getting worse. What is the future for the whole collecting society system?
There's only one collecting society.
Well, none of us are collecting societies. We all more or less work for collecting. Well, you're not a society, you're a service provider to societies, so to speak. So, I mean, it's kind of like, how much do you want to diss our customers? But I think fragmentation is not only a rights, it's also, and this whole blockchain thing, I think the ones who are going to survive are the ones who are going to be clever about how they manage their rights. And those guys are the ones who are going to do and my partner hates it because I'm such an 80s buff from the US, are the ones who are going to do the Pepsi challenge several times. So that means that some societies are going to use ice, and some are going to use sasem, and some are going to use another outfit, and they're going to compare notes and see where am I getting the best result. And that's the clever approach to this thing. So I don't believe, as Cliff is saying, I don't believe in a huge hub that's going to rectify everything. I think the fragmentation or the availability
in that chain of value, and where do they add and where do they subtract? And that, for me, I think is an even bigger problem. And it's for people that are looking to invest and grow those areas of where they sit on the value of the chain, because the one-stop shop isn't going to arrive anytime soon. And that's what I think that we should just be aware of, is that the music industry is not complex, it is maddeningly sophisticated. And it's by working with people who understand that sophistication, be they lawyers, be they platforms, be they advisors, rather than cynically monetizing complexity, which is at the heart of fragmentation, in my personal view.
There is a saying that it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. Are we still there? Is it better to launch a new SoundCloud without getting licensing deals in place? Or